All right, are we good now?
I think we're good. All right. So thank you for that introduction. Yes, I'm here to talk about security and integrating security into DevOps. So RoboCop, bringing law and order to CI/CD. I know I probably look like a giant up here. Yes, I really am this tall. So before I begin, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am an information security professional. So I've been in security for approximately the last 15 years or so. It's something I'm very passionate about. Now, when I got into security, a lot of people that were in security with me at the time, when I first joined, they were from the background of, network architecture, network engineers, sysadmins, but that wasn't my background. My background is software. And software is something I've been doing for a long time. I remember my first computer I actually touched early in elementary school was a Commodore VIC-20. So yes, I'm probably dating myself to some of you. The first programs I wrote were in BASIC on a TI-99. I see some TI-99 people out there. So yeah, saving my programs to a cassette tape, just writing little basic programs, and that's how I grew up. In the 5th grade, believe it or not, the teacher asked us to draw a picture of your future career. And you know what I drew? I drew a picture of me sitting at a computer. And I said, I want to be a computer programmer. 5th grade. Now, if a kid said that now, it's no big deal because these kids grew up with computers. But in the mid-'80s, that's kind of a big deal. So yes, my background, before I got into security, I was a software engineer. Doing some pretty cool things, software engineering-wise. At the time, when I was a software engineer, I was working on training systems, flight simulators, fighter jets, real cool stuff. I get to work, we network a couple of simulators together, me and a coworker, set up some scenarios, have some bogeys out there, dogfight, boss comes by, what are you guys doing? We're testing software, boss. Really, we were just playing. So I get a call, are you interested in security? At the time, I don't know anything about security. Don't know much about it at all. But the job was in Texas. And for some reason, I was trying to move to Texas. So I took the job, and that's how I ended up in security. So during my security career, I've done lots of different things, access control, multi-factor authentication, biometrics, voice, fingerprint, etc., little threat intelligence, and what I love to do, what I'm passionate about, application security. So as I explained, my background in software and security, I think it's the perfect blend, and it's something I'm passionate about. It makes me, kind of a subject matter expert and someone that could talk about application security. A little bit more about me. Hey, I enjoy the CTF because I like to hack into things. And CTFs allow me to hack into things and do it legally, and also it's competitive. Being a former athlete, somebody that is in the competition, I enjoy that. And last but not least, I'm a movie and trivia enthusiast. So by the title of the talk, you can probably gather, I enjoy movies, and I like trivia. If ever you're local and you go to any of the trivia nights like Geeks Who Drink or anything like that, and you need to round out your team with a good movie, pop culture TV person, give me a call. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about RoboCop. And you're probably wondering, what does RoboCop have to do with security? What does it have to do with DevOps? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about DevSecOps. And then we'll also talk about security tools within DevSecOps. Uh-oh. There we go. And then we'll talk about some of the things we're doing at my company at Lucian around the space of DevSecOps. So let's get into it. RoboCop. How many people remember the movie RoboCop? Okay. I'm talking about RoboCop 1987. I'm not talking about the 2014 remake. I guess I'm kind of a movie star, but maybe I just want to remember movies from my childhood. Yeah, I don't like all these remakes now. You know, I don't like seeing Jaden Smith as Karate Kid. You know, I want to see Daniel LaRusso fighting Johnny at the All Valley tournament. That's what I want to remember. You know, remake of Poltergeist. You know, I want to remember the old lady telling Carrie Ann to go to the lights, go to the lights. So I'm talking about 1987 RoboCop with Peter Weller. He played as Alex Murphy, a loving husband and cop, father, who was critically injured in the line of duty. Then the OCP Corporation brought him back as a part man, part robot to help clean up old Detroit. Now I'm going to hit you with a little bit of movie knowledge, a little something extra. RoboCop was actually filmed here in Dallas. He wasn't cleaning up old Detroit, he was cleaning up Dallas. So if you look on the left, the OCP building was really Dallas City Hall. Detroit City Hall was really just a Dallas Municipal building. So he was really cleaning up our fair burg here. So if you remember the movie, in the movie RoboCop had prime directives, 3 prime directives. Or really 4, but we won't get into that for this talk, 3. So RoboCop's prime directives. Now I'll actually let RoboCop tell you what they are. Well, I take it you couldn't hear that because it wasn't mic'd up. But his 3 prime directives were serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. Now, what does that mean in terms of security? Let's get into that. Serving the public trust, what is that? Well, definition of public trust. It's trust created for the promotion of public welfare and not for the benefit of one or more individuals. Well, what's that mean? Public welfare in this instance is the business. We have to make security decisions that are based around the needs of the business. People outside of security see security coming, they get scared because they feel like we're going to be a blocker to what they're trying to do. We're going to slow down the process. So we need to make sure that security is a business enabler and not a blocker. So we have to make business-driven security decisions, and we're not just rubber stamping security, trying to fill out some checklist. We're making smart decisions that enable the business. So how do you do that? Collaborate. I think one of our speakers earlier talked about how the DevOps movement was formed and was breaking down that wall of collaboration. Well, security needs to be involved in that collaboration as well. We need to make sure we're involved, and we're making sure that we know how business is being done, and we're making decisions that help enable the business. We need to lean in and not just say no. Some of my security colleagues are from that prehistoric era where it was perimeter-based security, the old model of a castle with the moats. You keep everybody out, protect everything inside of it. Well, business is not done like that now. We know it's not done like that now. We have web applications, we have mobile applications, we have the cloud. Data's everywhere. So we can't just hang on to those old processes, those old ways of thinking. We need to lean in and learn what's going on. But how do we do that? Another way, we need to translate security for the layperson. If you want this buy-in, you want them to believe in these security best practices you're talking about, you can't just spew out all these security terms, and you need to actually translate it to the layperson so they can understand why it's important that we do these things that we do to get that kind of buy-in so we can all work together. Your typical application security team is a small team. I mean, you all probably know that. So low supply, high demand. So we all must work together because your typical application security team is like 3 or 4 people. So you have to have security champions outside the software security group to champion what you're doing to get that buy-in. So what else do we have? Another directive, protect the innocent. Well, who's the innocent? The innocent are the product teams, the developers, the business. We must protect them from malicious actors, those threats on the outside, those who want to do harm to the business. Every time I see protect the innocent, I think about another movie. Another movie quote that always pops in my mind, where the guy says, to protect the sheep, you have to catch the wolf. And to catch the wolf, it takes a wolf to catch the wolf. I think you know what movie I'm talking about. So what I'm saying there is, developers are not security experts. They're not. So it takes security people to help protect them. But developers, they're under a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of pressure to deliver features, deliver them on time. So at times, security can be an afterthought. But we don't need security to be an afterthought. Not at all, because security needs to be built in and not bolted on. So one of the things we try to do is move security further to the left. So it's thought about earlier within our software development life cycles. Many of you probably seen studies that tell you how much it exponentially costs more to find and fix security flaws later on in the life cycle versus earlier. I've seen some reports saying 15 to 90 times more. So let's build in versus bolted on. Another point, developers are lazy. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm just saying that with the pressures they're under to deliver, they're using more open source code. But open source code is good, very good. It's making its way into more and more applications. You see the split nowadays, it's probably almost 50-50 custom code to open source code, which is good. Open source offers tremendous benefits, especially with our agile processes, our agile development processes. So it leads to faster development times and to cost savings. But when you do that, are you introducing new vulnerabilities into your application that you weren't aware of? Something to think about. And the third primary directive, uphold the law. Well, to be able to uphold the law, you got to know what the law is. What is the law? In terms of business, it's your policies. What are your policies that allow you to operate as a business? These policies determine the risk you'll take. Security at its core is about managing risk. And these policies help you to manage that risk. I don't know about you, but I know in my company, one of our policies, our law, we won't release any software that has critical or high severity vulnerabilities. Not at all, won't happen. So that's a policy for us. What are your standards? Do you have secure coding standards? If you're putting some kind of cryptographic function in your software, are you dictating the algorithms that must be used? Are you mandating input validation, that you don't trust any input that comes in from the outside? So those are things you need to think about. Those are ways that you uphold the law. And how do you do that within your DevOps pipeline? Put in security gates. Put in checkpoints. You test the software. You test it against these policies, against these standards. And you can shut down a build if necessary to make sure that your laws are being upheld. When we have these security gates, you treat all applications equally. In my eyes, all applications aren't equal. Say if you have a credit card processing application. Well, at that point, you're bringing in PCI into scope. High risk at that point. Another application you have may be something simple as your product catalog. A little bit more low risk. So you got to think about that. Do you enforce these security gates the same for all applications across the board, or do you determine what the risk is? Let's talk about DevSecOps at Lucien. So Lucien, what is Lucien? Well, Lucien is the company I work at. Our company is focused on modern technology designed for higher education. Our sole purpose is this, is to help students achieve success and advance our entire society. But how do we do this? We do this by providing the technology, solutions, and services that institutions and students need. This company has been around for 40 years. We support 2,400 institutions, 18 million students in 40 countries worldwide. So a couple years ago, came with this cloud strategy. Once we came up with our cloud strategy, we started implementing DevOps processes. And after that, start onboarding our product teams into our DevOps pipeline. Talking about like 60, 70 product teams. Now they're not all onboarded at this time, but it's an ongoing process. You know, we have probably around 100 products. So how do we define DevOps? There are multiple ways to look at DevOps. We try to define it somewhat simply. We define it as a cultural aspiration where development, operations personnel, security architects, network engineers, etc. are working together with minimal barriers by advocating improved communication and collaboration to achieve increased agility, automation, security, and an improved customer experience. So as you see there, simply people working together with a common set of tools and goals. We even have a DevOps mission statement. Automate all things. Why is that? Well, make sure that we don't forget tasks. Our tasks are repeatable. It allows us to focus on more high-value items. So for me in particular, it allows me to do more manual testing. I had to hack into our applications, which I like to do. I enjoy that. So DevSecOps, what is that? Well, we know DevOps. We are all here for DevOps, and we talk about DevOps. We talk about development operations coming together. We talk about culture, automation, measurement, sharing. That's good. And DevOps can rapidly speed up the pace in which software is developed and deployed through CI/CD. While the integration, without the integration of proper security thinking and processes, this method of rapid deployment and development can introduce security flaws. So then what is DevSecOps? Well, for us, DevSecOps is putting the cops in the DevOps. In particular, RoboCop. Part man, part robot. So for us, we combine automated tools along with human oversight in order to achieve our directives at scale. So DevSecOps, automation, security tasks. But how do you do that? Well, how do you do it? You got to pick the right tools for the job. So if I was going to hang a picture in my house, I wouldn't use a sledgehammer. So I have to use the right tools. So what are the tools? Well, in application security testing, you can break down tools into essentially these three. You have static, dynamic, and interactive. So your static tool, your SAS tool, analyzes the application's source code or bytecode and checks for security vulnerabilities. Your DAS tool analyzes applications in their dynamic running state. It simulates attacks against the application, analyzes the application's reactions, and determines whether or not there's vulnerabilities. In your interactive, your IaaS, combines elements of the SAS and the DAS simultaneously. So it's typically implemented as an agent and instrumented into your test runtime environment and observes for vulnerabilities. But now, one application security testing tool won't do the job because there's no one tool that will catch all the vulnerabilities. So each tool has a purpose, has something that's better at than the other ones. So your SAS tool. Like like I was telling you, it inspects data flows through the source code. Essentially, you can use it to pull the code from your repo, whether it's your Git repository, and then scan it. And it will tell you whether or not there's vulnerabilities there. An advantage of it, you can use it earlier in your development lifecycle because you don't have to build it, you don't have to compile it and deploy it to a server. All you need is the source code itself. So there's no need for code compilation. Cons, false positives. And that's linked to, it may report findings that can't be exploited. So what I mean by that is, say your SaaS tool points out that you have some cross-site scripting in a particular module, but it may be a false positive because it may not know that you have another module that does your input validation and output encoding that mitigates that cross-site scripting. So it doesn't really exist in a running state. I don't know why this clicker's not working. So your DAS tool. Like I was telling you, it runs attacks against your running application. So any vulnerabilities that are found are exposed in real time. So another advantage of it is no need for the source code. Say if you have a third-party application that you don't have the source code for, you can run a DAS tool against it to check for any vulnerabilities. It checks vulnerabilities on the client and server side. But a con, like I say, this is testing against a running application. If it finds a vulnerability, it can't tell you where in your source code is at. So it can't tell you the location for remediation. You make a one-line code change, now you have to rebuild it and redeploy it so you can retest it with the DAS tool. Another negative, it may not cover all areas of the application. DAS tool will spider the app and it will try to find all the potential attack vectors, but it may not. I find that more and more as these single-page applications are coming out. With these client-side technologies and frameworks being used, such as Angular, the DAS tool may not know all the paths through the code, through the application. So you may not get complete coverage through the tool. So SaaS versus DAS. Each tool has issues that it's better at finding than the other one. They both find your SQL injections, your cross-site scriptings, etc. But the DAS tool will find some things that the SaaS tool won't find. So for instance, a DAS tool is better at finding environment configuration issues. So what I mean by that is if, you're using SSL version 3, it'll tell you it's not good. You should upgrade to at least 1.1 or TLS version 1.2. You have authentication issues, session management issues where you're using predictable cookies, session cookies. It'll let you know that. On the other hand, your SaaS tool, it'll tell if you're using poor crypto. You're using outdated algorithms in your crypto. If one of your developers decide to hard code passwords and credentials into the code, it'll let you know that. So this goes back to picking the right tool for the job and knowing what they're capable of finding. Now the IaaS tool. This is the one I was saying that you instrument into your application. So a con right there is it has to be integrated into the application. It can't just run on its own. But what it can do is it can enhance your dynamic scanning tool. So recall when I said the dynamic scanning tool, it'll tell you it's a vulnerability, but it won't tell you where it's at. With the combination of the interactive tool, it can pinpoint the exact location where the vulnerability may be found and gives you that point of remediation within your code. So let's get into this here. So this is the DevSecOps at Lucy, and this is what my team, we've put together. So to start off, you see our pipeline, you see our workflow there, and you see the different stages of it. Probably similar to what you guys have. On the far left, starts with code, moving through build and test. Finishes off in the staging area, where then we can then decide whether or not we'll actually deliver the code into our production environment. At each stage of the workflow, you can see some of the tools in our tool chain. Now, I'm not here to promote any tools. I'm not advocating any tools. You have to decide on your own what's best for your business and your use cases. But these are some of the things we use. So Artifactory for our binary repository, Ansible, Terraform, Packer, in our testing, our functional testing, QA testing, Selenium, Rest Assured, and then for our performance testing, WebLoad, and also server spec, et cetera. So that's just an idea of some of the things that we're using. So you may be asking yourself, where does security fit in? How does it fit into our pipeline here? Well, it just drops in like that. So what are we using? Well, we talked about a SaaS tool. Well, our SaaS tool, check marks. So, our SaaS tool, we feel it provides another layer, allows us to examine the entirety of our code base. Why we have this particular tool? Well, as I told you before, we have a lot of products. So we have a lot of different languages we have to support. We have Ruby, .NET, C#, Node, Java, JavaScript, even Apex. So with this broad set of languages, we need tools that can support what our needs are. In addition, we can do incremental scans and also set up our own customized rule set. Also, in our building and test phase, we also employ dependency check. Dependency check is an OWASP project. Now, how many people have heard of OWASP? Okay. So OWASP is a nonprofit organization that promotes security best practices for web applications. It stands for Open Web Application Security Project. So dependency check is one of the tools that you can find within one of their projects. So every few years, OWASP comes out with this top 10 list of common security flaws within web applications. So in the last list they released in 2013, number 9 on the list was using components with known vulnerabilities. So remember when I was talking about developers being lazy earlier and open source code? Well, here's our tool that we use to check to see what our developers are bringing in third-party libraries and dependencies. And we check those against, well, the tool does it. So the tool fingerprints the dependency, identifies what it thinks it is, and it checks it against the National Vulnerability Database, and report back any findings of vulnerabilities in those dependencies. So at that point, we can address them. Developers can upgrade their code if necessary. Well, the dependency if necessary. And next to there, we have Arachne and HP Web Inspect. So those tools are our DAS tools, our dynamic scanning tools. Arachne, open source. HP Web Inspect is our commercial tool. So you may be wondering why we have two tools. Well, for us, we feel like it gives us better coverage by allowing us to verify the security of applications through two different lenses. So one we use differently than the other one. Arachne is more meant for scanning our nightly builds. And the way that we choose to operate within the cloud, we like to have ephemeral instances. So Arachne is something that we can use within our Jenkins pipeline. If we have a job that needs to scan an application, we can spin up an instance with the Arachne software on it, perform the scan, and then if it's not used after a certain period of time, we can tear it down. We got to save money. We got to check our costs. HP, like I said, is our commercial tool. That one we ask our teams to use at least once in their release cycle. And when we go to check whether or not software can be released, because remember I told you our law can't release any criticals or highs, HP Web Inspect makes that determination for us. And I'm not even going to talk about what's out there to the right, the next pose, but that's something that we're looking at, to using to do our kind of our infrastructure, host scanning, vulnerability scanning. But we may switch that out at some point. Use AWS Inspector, which is something that they've just come out with in the last, probably early this year. So you may be asking yourself, okay, now Frank, you have 4 tools. Each tool has its outputs, has results of these scans. How do you manage all that? I'll tell you how. Via threat fix. So threat fix is a vulnerability management tool that consolidates all these scan results. And then for us, it gives us a window into the state of our applications. At any one point in time, we can assess our risk. But remember, security at its core is about managing risk. So within threat fix, we can see the results of our various scans for our applications, get a complete picture of our application security state as the AppSec team, and we can actually do analysis on the findings. Then we can also report and put out our metrics. How many criticals are we finding? How many highs? How quickly are they being remediated? These are things we want to know. Now, another important feature of threat fix, now we don't necessarily use it, but the capability is there. These findings, these vulnerabilities, we can push out to our product teams through Jira. We use Jira. So we can speak to developers, we speak to the product teams in a way they're used to communicating. So we can take these vulnerabilities that are found and push them out and put new tickets in their backlog. At that point, then they can go ahead and remediate. So this right here is just our DevSecOps picture. Now, if you want to learn more about how we're doing DevOps, at Ellucian, there's a couple of talks that are available out there on YouTube. One talk, Enterprise DevOps at Scale, was a talk our Senior Director of DevOps gave recently at the AWS Public Sector Summit. So you can learn about some of the things that we're doing in particular around DevOps. The second talk, DevOps on the AWS Cloud, is a talk given by our chief scientist. And he kind of takes you through the process we went through in developing our DevOps processes at Ellucian, how we developed our framework. So take a look at those as well. So to summarize, automate as much as possible. You may not feel like you can, but you can. Automate as much as possible. Free yourself up to take on more high-value tasks. When you do that, choose technologies that meet your business needs and processes. Pick the tools that perform the tasks that you feel like will help your business, help you run more efficiently, lower your risk, and meets the goals. If one thing I can't stress enough, make security a feature. Now, if RoboCop was here, I'm sure he would say something like, excuse me, I have to go, but somewhere there is a attempted security breach happening. Thank you. Yeah, I tried to tell you.
Sorry, there we go. Thanks, Franklin, that was awesome. So just one question before we get to lunch. One of the things that I struggled with when I started doing the DevOps stuff is that security people have a completely different culture, background. A lot of them have military background. They're rule followers, and then developers are kind of like disruptive innovators, not as much rule followers. So for people in the audience that are not security people, what is your advice to them for finding common ground in that? Because a lot of times you can just kind of get in a fight, or you know, even if you put the things on the Jira backlog, it's like, oh, those aren't the high priority things. So what should a developer do to reach out to security to maybe create some of the things that you're showing us today and make that their future?
Well, I think we as security people, we need to help them understand the importance of security. And I think what we do is we have regular talks with our development teams. So we might have a lunch and learn, or we might go present at a team meeting. So help them to gain an understanding of why we feel it's important and why we do the things that we do. But at the same time, we're learning from them. So it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about collaborating. Yeah. And collaboration is just very important. So it's not just collaboration amongst the DevOps teams, but collaboration with security as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times just going and having lunch or talking, like having the conversation, like what's your struggle and what's my struggle, and
right. And I think Andy had told a great story about that yesterday, about the talk that you guys had with I forgot who it was with, but
with Inspect.
With Inspect, yeah. And then how at the end of that talk, after that dinner, there was an understanding between the security folks and the non-security people.
Right. So the chef people were in town, and the people who wrote Inspect were in town, and I had been dealing with my security people in a bad way, and so I invited them over for dinner to my house. The two security people and then two chef people, and Andy was there. Andy made the food, but like a lot of times it's something like really personal like that breaks through a barrier or an email where you're just like, you know, thinking of someone as an enemy, and all of a sudden you have a glass of wine and nice food around you in somebody's house. It's a very personal space, so people opened up, and that was the breakthrough for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good story. All right, thanks a lot, Franklin.
All right, thank you.